It's a meeting of the minds on Trust the Profits as we take stock of the 2023 Kentucky Derby contenders. Salutations and welcome all of you who are watching to this wonderful Kentucky Derby contenders discussion with all of us on Trust the Profits. We got the whole gang together. The last time I think we were all together, we were wrapping up the 2022 year and looking ahead to 2023. And now we are here in mid-March talking about what's we've seen already on the Kentucky Derby Trail and what we hope to see over the last 6 weeks of preps. My name is Matthew DeSantis. I'm joined by Colin Sheehan. I'm joined by El Hombre. I'm joined by the Formula. Fellas, how are we doing tonight?
I'm doing great. I'm with my buds tonight. This is awesome. I love that we got together for this. It's a good time to talk about it. We got ourselves a little bit of a break this weekend before the next set of prep races. So I'm fired up to just talk about what's ahead and what's behind.
Absolutely. This has been, I think, a crazy prep season. We've seen a lot of developments, horses changing hands, horses off the Derby Trail, back on the Derby Trail. We've seen all sorts of things here just in the last week, to be honest, but even throughout the time that we've had these races the last 3 months. So let's start by taking a look back. And Colin, I'm going to start with you. And we're going to kind of go around the horn and answer some questions that we have here, thinking about the Kentucky Derby prep trail. Like I said, start with you, Colin. What has been your biggest takeaway when looking at the Derby trail, when looking at the races run to this point? What's been your biggest takeaway to this point on the Derby trail?
Well, first and foremost, I'm glad February 28th passed, so we never have to worry about this. Is the Bob Baffert horse again? The 2-year suspension will be up next year, so let's just get this behind us and stop doing this whole shebang of points not counting when the horses are winning races. They added points for 5th place, which hasn't had as big of an impact as it will in the next round of races when that amount of points really bumps up. You know, when you get 1 point in the early race in September and October, it doesn't matter as much. But what I have really enjoyed so far are the prices, and they're logical horses that I have been really close on. You notice I say close because I haven't been crushing it, but Angel of Empire, Reincarnate, Practical Move, you're getting 10-1, 4-1, 13-1, 18-1 on Confidence Game. And these aren't horses like Unoho, who's hitting at 70-1. You're like, okay, well, I wasn't going to get to that horse, right?
Lottery tickets, yeah.
And that's why I've talked about, enjoying the chaos, because when you have multiple, when you only have one horse like Forte, and we had one like Arabian Night, Forte's only ran one race. So all those other races that are so close is what allows you this opportunity to have these prices that have come up. My other thing I've taken away is I'm a little bit disappointed, as I always am, at the horses that, as you say, could have been. Yeah. And I wouldn't pass up an opportunity to talk about what could have been with.
Here we go.
I won't even say him. Extra Neho, right? Extra Neho. We had a lot of promise, and that was the Steve Asmussen who were looking to break that 0-for-24 start, right? Most Strike's the only one that's beaten Forte. I haven't seen him in a while. Now we've lost Arabian Night. And and Loggins too. So it's the horses that you always pour a little beer out for what could have been, and we look forward to their return.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think that's a great point. It's somebody, I forget if it was one of you or somebody on Twitter that said Mo Strike could end up being a great trivia question at some point, that, who's the horse that beat Forte? And you're right. We haven't even, I don't even think he's been on the workout tab last time I checked. So you're right. We've seen some of those precocious 2-year-olds kind of drop by the wayside, not come back. So Formula, what's been your biggest takeaway from this prep season?
Yeah, as we look at our top fives, and we've scanned through our top fives here and there, the biggest takeaway for me so far is stalkers and closers. A lot of the speed horses that we've seen so far are now off the Derby trail. I mean, you even talk about Forte, and you look at his last race, he was pretty much stalking and closing the entire time. It was really that stretch run that he had where he separated himself from the rest of the pack. But we're not seeing like an Authentic going wire to wire. We're not seeing a Medina Spirit going wire to wire. We're not seeing like that speed that we saw, not not so much last year, but the years previous.
Mhm.
There aren't a lot of those horses that we're really talking about in our top 5 that are going to go wire to wire. It's all about the ones that are really getting those strong stretch runs, at least so far. That
Yeah.
could change.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great takeaway. And the way the pace could potentially set up in the Kentucky Derby is quite intriguing. If all these horses are kind of stalkers, mid packs, and closers, nobody wants to lead. All these horses need a lead to close into, but who's going to be the rabbit? And so it will be
Yeah.
interesting.
And
Alon,
there will be one. There will
what's
be
been
a
Someone will
your
pay
biggest
rabbit.
Zydeco to go in there. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. What's been your biggest takeaway?
Similar, I guess, kind of along the same path as where Colin was going. I think it's a shallow field of like elite talent, but the top tier, those top few are potentially really good horses. I mean, especially Forte, obviously, but I don't know. I don't think there's a lot of depth here, as you can see. I mean, once you get past the first few, I don't see a whole lot of horses that are going to come off and surprise anybody. Of course, I mean, who knows? It's early still in the season. There could be a couple more emerge, but to me, it just looks like it's a much more clearer picture at the top for the top 3 or 4 than it has been in the past few years. I mean, you look at last year, the year before, there was like 10 or 12 horses in the conversation that we're talking about. And this year, it seems like more like 3 or 4.
Yeah,
And,
no,
everybody below that is a grade below. They even the race winners so far. I don't think anybody has a lot of confidence in a horse like Hit Show or there are several examples of horses that have won
Litigate
some of these preps. Litigate.
Yeah, that's a good example.
So,
yeah. I know. I think that's an interesting point, and it kind of goes into what my biggest takeaway is to this point as well, which is that we've not really seen many wow performances. Those performances that make you go, "Oh my gosh, that's a Derby horse, that's a Derby winner." Forte is just so businesslike in the way he goes about doing his job that it doesn't really, it's impressive to watch, but it's not a oh my gosh type of a moment. The biggest oh my gosh moment we had was probably Tapit Trice recently, with coming all the way from the back to win against a relatively weak field down at Tampa Bay Derby. So, how much can you really take out of that? But I do think it's interesting that this might be a crop of horses. Ellenbray, you kind of mentioned not that deep in terms of top end talent. I agree. But it might be a good crop to replenish the older handicap division next year, because I don't think there's a lot of horses that are going to command big stud fees and sire fees out of this group.
Right.
But I think there's a lot of solid horses that are probably just going to make a living winning grade 3 races and listed stakes races and grade 2s. Things, I mean, the classic car washes of the world, the classic legacies of the world, maybe the Angel of Empire, Sun Thunder. These types of horses are going to kick around, I think, as 4 and 5 year olds. And quite frankly, that's something we need, because we don't have any good 4 and 5 year olds right now. So, if we get 3 or 4 Skippy long stockings out of this class, it'll be a success, I think. So, well, we talked about what has happened in terms of what's our biggest takeaway, but there's been a lot of ups and downs, a lot of surprises. Formula, I'm going to start with you. What has been your biggest surprise of the Kentucky Derby prep season thus far?
It is March, and we are almost done talking about Bob Baffert horses, and it has nothing to do with the suspension at all.
Yeah.
All the Bob Baffert horses, except for Reincarnate, I believe. You guys can correct me if I'm wrong. But I mean, we can go down the list, right? All sorts of outstanding horses, too. Gave Rock, Arabian Night, Newgate, Faustin, Hijazi, even having a meltdown, who wasn't really on the trail, but he was getting some talk up early and, late in the year last year. But all these horses are off the trail, mainly because of injuries, it seems. And we could be going into a Kentucky Derby without really any sort of major Bob Baffert presence. I know we've got Tim Yachtine out there running his horses, but like last year, Messier and Taiba, we all thought of those as Bob Baffert horses. Nobody thought of them as Tim Yachtine horses. But it's going to be different this year. Absolutely different from last year.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. That's one of my big takeaways as well. And to your point, National Treasure, likely also one of those horses, was scratched from the San Felipe. It does seem like he might be back working, but still, that's very hit or miss whether he's going to be going for Santa Anita or not in the Derby. And so, yeah, just another one of the laundry list of horses that is off the trail for him. And and not to mention some of those kind of B and C level horses that he had who shipped to smaller barns, the Gilmores of the world, or some of those types of horses. So, Ellenbray, what's been your biggest surprise of this Derby prep season?
And we've only hit this is the second question, and we've each given one answer so far, 1.5 answers, if you will, and we've already brought up Baffert 100 times. But my biggest surprise is similar to what the formula was just saying. The California and Baffert situation, that it's really thin there, and it's bad.
Yeah.
And the fields have been horrible up until the San Felipe was somewhat decent, but it wasn't too long ago where I felt like California had maybe not the deepest fields ever, but a lot more talent than it seems like right now. I think that seems like the last couple of years they've gone downhill quick, and I don't know. That's my biggest surprise. There's not a lot going on with the top of the food chain from the California side like there had been. I mean, I remember 2 or 3 years ago, especially, it seemed like Baffert had like Hawks and Pletcher look right now, just stacked with 10 great horses, and maybe Baffert out of the list formula just went down of those few horses. Yeah, they all look good, but he didn't have any world beaters this year. Yeah, neither does Yatin or anybody else in California for that matter. I don't think there's any California horses that are super impressive. But I mean, we're gonna see. See in the comments all the haters on me on that one, but
and I think it's interesting. A trainer like Doug O'Neill used to have a huge presence, I think, at the Derby,
right.
and obviously doesn't really have any entries. I mean, I think he's got a couple of
Mandela
horses that might be running over in the UAE Derby. Mandela's got one that I'm interested in, but yeah, that's it. And it's a deplenished crop. And what I would say is, I do think Elumbra, your point, and this is kind of one of my biggest surprises, is the concentration of power in Louisiana and Arkansas. I feel like that's where the preps are, that you want to be at the Louisiana Derby. You want to be at the Arkansas Derby. I mean, those fairgrounds and Oaklawn preps have been by far and away the best. I mean, Forte was very, very good down in Florida, but I mean, Rocket Can's a nice horse. I don't know beyond that. Blazing Sevens, dropped anchor around the 4 furlong mark. I mean, there wasn't much else in that field. And I mean, the Holy Bull was a relatively weak race. Those Tampa preps have not been particularly strong. It really is the fairgrounds and Oaklawn where you kind of go, this is probably where the Derby horses and winners are going to come out of, because they've been running against each other in some really stiff competition with Two Phils, with Instant Coffee, with Angel of Empire, with Sun Thunder, with obviously Arabian Night before he was taken off the trail, but then Confidence Game and Red Route 1 and Reincarnate. And I mean, you got really good horses in those circuits. And so it's interesting. I think Florida's kind of been a little bit lesser. I think California's been a little bit lesser. I think weather is miserable in New York, and so that's been irrelevant largely because they just run on sealed tracks all the time. But and around one turn for some reason in March for prep races. But it is that's been kind of my big takeaway, is the balance of power shifting to Louisiana and Arkansas during this prep season. But Colin, don't want to leave you out. What's been your biggest surprise to this Derby prep season at this point?
Well, it's funny. It's clearly we didn't talk about this before because we were going down the same line and the same theme. And my was that the best Tim Yakteen horse is actually a horse trained by Tim Yakteen. So
that's absolutely right.
I mean, Practical Move to me looked really, really professional. And yeah, you can talk about what's out west, and that's going to be the negatives. But that was a 9-horse field in the San Felipe, and he was 4-1. So it wasn't like he was a rollover favorite in that race. There was a lot of money for Go Rocket Ride, Skinner, and some of the other horses that were Hijazi. And I thought, that was kind of a real mistake to let him go off 4-1. I think we watched that together, Matt, and it was like, wow. After you're like, wow, that was really professional. And I went, wow, he was 4-1, more than 4-1.
Yeah.
That was one surprise for me. The other surprise for me was actually Confidence Game in the Rebel. That we talked about the Risen Star and the Rebel were really the two meat of the bones, with the big fields and the most, kind of big names, and you're finally starting to see horses race against each other. 18.5-1 on Confidence Game. And as I said this in my first point of getting prices on horses that were logical, I certainly overlooked Confidence Game. But when you went back and looked at who he had been losing to with Instant Coffee, Two Phils, raced against Rocket Can, Forbidden Secret, him pulling off the Rebel, I overlooked Confidence Game, and that was a big surprise to me in that race, which I think is going to be really a key race, as you said.
Yeah, I agree. And also a candy ride, right? A candy ride in the slop. I mean, those horses usually take to those conditions very well. That's been also one of those, I think, an interesting through line, has been the bad weather in a lot of these prep races. I mean, Oaklawn, I don't think they've run on a dry, fast track yet. I mentioned that they're always running on slop up in New York. And so it does make evaluating these horses moving forward a little bit more challenging to go, how are they going to run on a dry, fast track? Formula, you mentioned all these deep closers. How are they going to take when the kickback's a little bit different, when the horses up front maybe don't get tired? What's going to, how does this all play into it? So a lot of, I think, intriguing things here. Now, before we get to our next question, I want to share with everyone our collective top fives. We've been sharing our consensus top 25 list, but each of us has our own different opinion on who is in our top five. And you can see everybody's top five up here, while we're all in agreement that Forte is indeed our number one choice at this point. There is a fair amount of variation underneath. I think all of us also have Instant Coffee on our list, but that's and maybe and I think that's the only other consensus horse in everybody's top five. So, El Hombre, I'm going to start with you. Out of the horses that you see on your list, or maybe some of our other lists here, what is the top contender you think that has the most questions yet to answer, or maybe has the most question marks yet to prove?
I think I actually put for the answer I brought to the table here was anybody not named Tapit Trice, Forte, or Instant Coffee. That's who has the most questions about them, because I think it's just wide open after those three to me.
Mm-hmm.
Even Practical Move could be, I guess, the fourth to me, but everybody after that has a lot of questions to answer. So, yeah. I mean, out of those top four, I think they've kind of already answered that they're at least, in the conversation for making the gate and having a real shot to win out of what we've seen so far. But anybody after those four, I don't really believe in Hit Show as my number five. I just think, because I'm looking around at your guys' top fives,
mm-hmm.
and I see several others in the same level as Hit Show to me.
Yeah.
I think there's 5 to 7 horses in that 5 to 10 range that are all about the same, that have a lot to prove.
Yeah, no, I think when looking at my top five list, it's interesting. I certainly feel very confident about probably 3 of the 5, in terms of my top 3: Forte, Practical Move, Instant Coffee. Feel pretty good about the 3 of them. And then I think the horse that probably has the most to prove is Go Rocket Ride, certainly from my list. This is a horse that finished second at the San Felipe, has only raced twice. So a lot of people talk about having that 2-year-old foundation, doesn't have that. Came out, ran just an absolute banger for Richard Mandela on debut, ran a 92 speed figure, which nobody's been running that fast this year. So that really kind of took a lot of people on notice. Came back in the San Felipe. And I think, Colin, you and I mentioned the professional effort of Practical Move. It was a pretty professional effort for Go Rocket Ride that day as well, considering it was only a second career race. Sat off the early speed of Hijazi. When Hijazi kicked really wide going around the third turn, had the maturity to go down on the inside and continue running on, and finished, I thought, a competitive second. This is a horse that I think has a ton of ability for Richard Mandela that they're going to continue to bring along. I'm going here more on upside, but certainly has a lot to prove going up against another good group in the Santa Anita Derby here in a few weeks. But I'm interested, Colin, out of your top 5, or out of the kind of big contenders, who do you think has the most questions to ask, or answer, I should say?
Well, I'm going to say Tapit Trice, actually.
Mm-hmm.
This horse continues to get off slow.
Mm-hmm.
The one big thing, and this will lead into kind of a little bit on your last question that we'll talk about later.
Mm-hmm.
One thing to pay attention to in this next round of races is, where do these jockeys go? Because that's what's really important to kind of give you a sense of what's going to happen, right? And Luis Saez has ran Tapit Trice. Saez is also running Instant Coffee, Litigate, King's Barnes, General Jim. So,
yeah,
I guess, would you go with Instant Coffee? Would you go with Tapit Trice if you're Saez? I think that's a pretty interesting question. And the way Tapit Trice has gotten off, and let's face it, I play that game of who's beaten who. And to me, the Rebel and the Risen Star fields were much more of a competition than what we saw in the Tampa Bay Derby. I'm sorry, Mikey Bananas, but you're going to have to beat more than Mikey Bananas to me if you're going to be on that top.
Was your guy.
So,
Poor Mikey Bananas.
That's my dad's guy. My dad was all about Mikey Bananas. But no, that's a really good point, Colin, about Tapit Trice. And you're right, getting off to those slow starts, and hard to imagine he's going to be able to get away with that against better fields.
I agree with that too. As my number 2, yeah, that's a problem.
Yeah. No, but
you have to train that out of him real quick.
Yeah, and it just was confirmed right before we started recording. He will be going to the Bluegrass next. So I mean, he definitely won't be able to get away without a Keeneland for sure. Formula, what's been your, what horse on your list do you think still has the most to prove or the most questions?
I honestly think it's the horse that we all have at number 3, Instant Coffee. So the last horse he ran, or the last race he ran, the Lecomte, it was only a 7-horse field. This is a horse that plods from behind, has to get through a lot of traffic in order to get his head of steam going up down the stretch. And he ran a 1:45, 8.5 furlong in that race, which is the worst time of all the horses that have run any of these major stakes races at 8.5 furlongs.
Yep.
So to me, we all love Instant Coffee. We love Brad Cox. But I think we need to see that horse in a wider field. We need to see him going 9 furlongs, and we need to see if he's going to be able to do this up against heavier competition than 2 fills.
Yeah, no, I think that it's interesting. Instant Coffee, I think, has been a beneficiary of a lot of the chaos in the Derby Trail, because he's been sitting on the sidelines while everybody else has been falling over each other. It seems like,
he keeps creeping up because people are dropping. Yeah,
exactly.
Horses dropping.
And the other thing is he's benefited from the fact that 2 fills has come back to run well. Confidence came back to run well.
Yeah.
He's benefited from the fact that these horses came back. Even Dennington came back to win a really good allowance race next time out at Fairgrounds. And so those are, his estimation just kind of continues to increase because of that. But I agree. I mean, we just haven't seen him, and somehow he's crept up the 3rd on all of our lists.
Lecomte feels like forever ago, right?
When was
Lecomte?
It really does.
Yeah.
It really does. So I will kick off this next question, which is, which horse that's not considered a top contender do we think that has the best shot at winning the Kentucky Derby? And I have to be honest, it's a horse that we mentioned in passing, Colin, you did, with regards to Luis Saez, and that's probably Kingsbarns. That's probably the horse that I would look at on this list and think, it feels like Pletcher really likes this horse, is likely going to be going to the Louisiana Derby and as the next prep. And so this is a horse that's 2 for 2. We talk about these young horses that don't have much 2-year-old foundation that are kind of bursting onto the Derby Trail. He's another one. 2 very professional efforts, routed last time, going 2 turns against Allowance Company at Tampa Bay Downs, and looked the part and was extremely professional that day. I'm excited to see him against Stakes Company, but I feel like he's a horse that has a ton of upside. Colin, I'll go next to you. What horse that's not on any of our lists, or maybe it's not on your list, that you see as a potential winner of the Kentucky Derby?
Well, you guys can correct me if I'm wrong. I don't know what we've heard about what's happening with Mage, but yeah, I'm just intrigued by what this horse has done. Second time out, only running 6 lengths behind Forte. 101 speed figure on debut, followed it up with a 95 in the Fountain of Youth. He hit the gate and was bumped in that race. As I said on my show, my interview with Video Hippico, Gustavo Delgado usually needs a couple races to get his horses going. And if this is what we've seen so far in the first 2 races, I'd be interested to see if he runs back. It's obviously sired by Good Magic and has Curlin on the pedigree there out of Big Brown. And you guys have talked about how it's all been closers, which is important to think about, maybe wanting early speed as we go further and approach the Kentucky Derby. And that's a horse that has shown early speed. And although Reincarnate's on my list, another horse that's shown quite a bit of early speed, but also the ability to close. So although he's on my list, he's not on any of yours. So those would be the 2 that I'm interested in.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great point about Mage. I think that was a sneaky good 4th place performance, actually, at what was that? The Fountain of Youth. That's what that was. So many stakes races to keep in track of. But yeah, you're right. I think that's the other reason I kind of probably like Go Rocket Ride maybe a little bit more, just because he does have the ability to be early speed in a potential field that might not have much. Formula, what's a horse you're looking at that is not on our list that maybe is high on your radar that you think might be a good dark horse?
Yeah, Kingsbarns. You took the words right out of my mouth with Kingsbarns. Last time out, he beat Mikey Bananas by, I think, about 8 lengths or so.
That should be it.
Let's bring up, exactly. If you can beat Mikey Bananas by 8 lengths, you deserve a spot on the list. That's just all. Come into agreement on that.
Love it.
So Kings Barnes is on my list. I was disappointed to see that he wasn't entered into the Tampa Bay Derby. I wonder if there's an issue with that, or maybe Pletcher just wanted to present his other monster, Tappet Trice, into Tampa Bay and take
Yeah.
over from there. But regardless, the other horse I did have, which is a horse that two of you already have really high on your list, and that's Practical Move. Oh, three of you. Okay, so I'm the
Yeah.
only one that doesn't have Practical Move on my list, and I put him as my
Yeah.
contender here.
Yeah, absolutely. The real yak teen.
The real Yak Teen, yes.
El
No
Hombre.
asterisk.
Yeah, exactly. El Hombre, who's your kind of dark horse or horse that's maybe lurking in the shadows that you like?
Well,
Oh,
I still don't see a plan for where he's heading next, but verifying, do we know where he's heading? Because I know he's about
we
30 to
don't
1
know.
odds.
Yeah, I
if
mean,
you
I would
consider that
imagine
an
he's going to be at the,
outsider.
I would imagine he's going to be at the Arkansas Derby, but I've not seen that confirmed necessarily. So
That's what I was thinking too. And kind of goes along on, I think Colin was the one who said it about the Rebel just being a pretty good field, and he was coming off the one hole. He got caught in some horrible traffic. He had a 70 to 1 and a 30 to 1 shot side by side in front of him, and just got stuck on the rail, couldn't move. When he finally broke through, it was too late, and he didn't show the massive speed to close that I thought he might, but he didn't embarrass himself either. I just thought it wasn't a great run by any stretch. It was a bad trip. It was a bad race, but he has one of the rare ones. You mentioned it earlier, Matt, about not a ton of horses have flashed big speed figures at all in this grouping, this crop, and he's at the top few for sure, if not the top ceiling for just pure speed. So I think I'd like to see him one more time. I think he's got an outside shot still.
yeah, I think you and I have talked about that a little bit on our top 25 list, but I agree. He's worth another shot because that trip at the Rebel was not ideal. I think that Rebel's going to come back really strong because, Colin, to your point, Reincarnate had issues that day and had to kind of show a whole new dimension to himself. I do think Confidence Games is a legitimate horse. A horse we haven't really mentioned that I know everybody likes to talk about is Red Route 1, who comes flying at the end in a very dramatic fashion, never wins, but is a great horse to use in your exactas. That's for sure. Well, listen, let's close it out with looking ahead. And Colin, you started this thing off, so I'm going to kick it back to you to start off this last round of questions. What are you looking for? And you kind of alluded to it already a little bit, but maybe expand on it. What are you looking for in these upcoming final series of those 100-point prep races?
There's only one jockey in the top 20. We'll say the top, roughly top 20 of the jockeys that's spoken for, and that's Irad. Irad's ridden Forte every race. He's not going anywhere else. He rides for Pletcher.
Yeah.
Cross him off the list. When you start looking through the past performances, a lot of these other horses, not only do they not have like a singular jockey, they're having multiple jockeys that have been riding them. So it's not even like, okay, well, Saez is riding 4 different horses that I talked about earlier. Right. Those horses that Saez has been riding on, like Litigate, Castellano rode Litigate the first 2 times, and then Saez jumped aboard. And if you just keep going through these past performances, what I was doing here, you're just seeing jockeys are really moving all over the place. And even a lot of the big names, Velasquez has been riding National Treasure. That was really the only specific horse that he's been riding on, aside from, I think he was riding Arabian Night, right?
Mm-hmm.
So Arabian Night's out. Now where's Jay Vigo? And that is something that when you have so many prep races, this next round, the jockeys are going to be on the horse that they're probably going to want to ride for the Kentucky Derby, I would think, right? Like you're not going to pass up the 100-point race in the Florida Derby or the Bluegrass, and then suddenly you try and find your way onto one of the top contenders, unless obviously the connections are trying to make that move. So that is certainly something that I think you really need to pay attention to, because more so this year, there seems to be a little bit more of up in the air on who's going to actually be riding who. And the other thing I like to pay attention to, obviously, winners of the Kentucky Derby generally win their last race prior to the Kentucky Derby. So obviously Rich Strike certainly messed that up quite a bit. But,
he messed a lot of things up, but yeah.
A lot of the winners that you're going to see over the next 2 or 3 weeks is going to be important. And also another stat that I'd like to look at, I think it's like 27 out of 30 of the last winners have run the final furlong in 13 seconds or less, or the final 3 furlongs in 38 seconds or less. So that's just a little nugget, and you can find that on horseracing.nation.com. They have a great article about some of those weird stats.
Mhm.
And when you've got a month between April 5th and the first Saturday in May, that's the shit I'm going to be doing on a Thursday night in the middle of April. It's like, well, let's see who ran,
13 seconds. And yeah.
Aside
Can
from watching,
you make a list out for me on that one?
I will.
Yeah.
I don't
we're
want to
gonna
have
need
to
to
do that deep dive.
Yeah,
We
we're
just
gonna
don't have enough data.
We're gonna need a Google Doc for that one. But no, I think that's a great point, Colin. And for all of folks listening out there, you're probably wondering, what are we going to do between the last prep race and the Kentucky Derby? Never fear. Trust the Profits has you covered. Colin and I are going to be doing a huge barn tour of all the major barns. Formula's got stuff. El Hombre's got stuff. We got so much content planned for you between those final prep races and the Kentucky Derby. And not to mention, they're going to keep running races. It's not like they're going to stop running races between the Arkansas Derby and the Bluegrass. And it's not like they go on a hiatus in the sport for a month leading up to the Kentucky Derby. So
don't forget about everybody's favorite, the case against videos where we try to tear down those top few
and we were
by playing devil's advocate if you must.
And we were very good at playing devil's advocate for the Breeders' Cup. And I believe we were 3 for 4 with calling those upsets. So
Flightline was our only heartbreaker from that.
Yeah,
uphill battle the whole way.
Yeah. Formula, what are you looking forward moving forward? What are you looking at?
So I got 2 things. I'll just give you one of them because I don't want to steal your thunder. I have a feeling someone is going to take my second one anyway. But what I'm going to do is reflect back on my answer to the first question, which is all about speed and pace. So down the stretch, think back to the last 3 years, right? So Medina Spirit, Authentic, they were heavy on the pace and they ended up closing out for the win. A little bit of an upset for both of them. And then last year you had a build up to that where the pace was set so dramatically. Everyone was trying to get on the pace because they saw the previous 2 years and thought they could win it with that. Right? That it got set off to such a blistering pace that the craziest closer of all ended up finding holes along the rail and won the Kentucky Derby. So what I want to see is, reflecting back on my answer from before, who are going to be the pace setters who can actually make it to the Derby and are looking ahead to set the pace and what they do with it.
It's a great point, because what's crazy is all of these preps, or a lot of these preps, I shouldn't say all, a lot of these preps have had aggressive early paces. Yet none of those horses are going to be in the Kentucky Derby.
Exactly.
Because they all fade into oblivion
coming
down the stretch. Yeah. And so there really is nobody other than Arabian Night who's now off the...
That's what I was going to say. Arabian Night was that.
He was that, but now he's off the Derby trail. But he was the only one who wired the field in a prep race. El Hombre, what are you looking forward? What are you looking to moving forward in the prep season?
I really expect it, with the 100-pointers starting. I think that one of these horses, and it may be one of the ones we mentioned, like toward the bottom of our top 5s, or maybe just on the outside looking in. I think one of these horses is going to take a major step forward and put themselves up there with that Forte range. Just because what's that?
2 fills. That would be my guess for that.
Well, I mean, there's a few that have flashed it and haven't maybe not had their race yet. Verifying's another one to me. There's quite a few. And I just think, I think that I'm most looking forward to seeing one of those horses make that big step forward and actually become a contender, because we did talk about, or I mentioned I thought it was pretty thin at the top as far as the elite horses go. And we are still 2 months away from the Derby almost. So there's time for a couple of those, maybe on the outside looking in to emerge. And I think it will happen. It happens every year.
Well, you're absolutely right. So a hero always emerges. Maybe not the hero that we deserve, but the hero that we need. And I will say that one of the things that I'm looking forward to in Formula, this might have been what you were referring to as well,
I'm curious.
Which is the internationalization of the Kentucky Derby.
You hit it.
Yeah.
Japan.
I had a feeling you were setting me up for that.
Yes.
But because what's funny is my other takeaway was with the pace situation. And so, I'm very interested in seeing who's going to come over from Japan, who's going to win the UAE Derby. Because remember, the UAE Derby winner, Summer is Tomorrow, was really the horse that screwed everything up last
Yeah,
year.
that was
That was the horse
Yes.
that in Summer is Tomorrow. I remember prepping to look at that UAE Derby. Summer is Tomorrow had never run over 7 furlongs before in his career, and then goes and wins the UAE Derby. The connections go, we're coming to Louisville. They go to Louisville and they go, we're going, guns blazing, and we're sending.
Literally.
And we're sending, and then Crown Pride from Japan comes over, and he's sending too, and it just led to this crazy fast pace, and so I don't know if we're going to get that again, just because it was a confluence of a right type of horse and the certain situation and all these things. But there's a horse, Perrier, who is really the top Japanese Derby contender at this point. I am looking forward to seeing him potentially come over. He's more of a mid-pack horse, honestly, more of what we've seen from some of these other Kentucky Derby prep horses domestically. And then, interested to see who ends up coming out of this UAE Derby. There's a horse from Japan that's entered in the Santa Anita Derby. I love to see more people come into play in the biggest race that we have in the sport. And I think it can only strengthen horse racing to see more international entries and more international contestants. So super excited to see hopefully a few different flags represented in the starting gate of the Kentucky Derby.
And with the doors are wide open for it this year too, with all the horses dropping out. This could be the year that they steal the thunder.
Absolutely.
And you could get 3, because if Mandarin Hero, who's the horse you mentioned going to the Santa Anita Derby, all he needs is a top 3 finish.
Yep.
And the top 2 of the UAE Derby are going to get in with 140 points. So you could have a lot more than you are thinking at this moment right now.
Absolutely. So should be fun. And listen, we got you covered from wall to wall. We got you covered every single day of the week with something. We got Formula doing his greatest stakes previews. We got El Hombre Thursday night into the lounge, only winners in the lounge, which was why I'm not invited, but it is always a good time. We got Cap in the card. Colin's got Dublin down. We got something for you no matter what type of horse racing fan you are. So make sure to press that subscribe button on YouTube to follow us on Trust the Profits. Make sure to like this video, comment below with your biggest takeaways and who you're looking forward to on the Kentucky Derby prep trail. Until next time, friends, my name is Matthew DeSantis, wishing you a great and prosperous day at the races and reminding you that it's now post time.